Call the meeting to order.
Down your mic.
Call the meeting to order. This is the executive committee meeting. Begin with the affidavit of posting. The agenda was posted in the office of county clerk on the 13th day of May, 2021. Notice was sent to the West Bend Daily News, Express News, WIBD, WMBZ Radio, WTKM Radio, My Community Now, Hartford Times Press, the Kewaskum Statesman, and the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Begin with a roll call. We are all here, and please join with me at Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is consent agenda. Motion by Supervisor Kelling, second by Supervisor Schleif. Anything on, did county executive want to speak to anything? Okay. Any other information, any other discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, on to the action items, use of strategic priority funds, policy director position. County executive, you want to speak to that?
Thank you. Yes, appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. So this agenda item is on the agenda as a reflection of some decisions that you have made as a body. The position that Matt Furno is currently in as policy director was originally established in the 2021 budget for the purposes of working us through the Samaritan project predominantly. That was our goal, to utilize and leverage his expertise in that area. Since then, as you may recall, a number of projects have been identified that we've asked Matt to take on as well, the biggest of which is the master planning project, as well as working along with other projects such as the ADA project and things of that variety. When we made that decision, our finance department gets a little bit nervous about using money from Samaritan to actually fund projects that are not or have nothing to do with Samaritan, and she's smiling and laughing in acknowledgement of that. But at any rate, clearly, if we're going to do that, we need to be fair to Samaritan's enterprise fund and not charge them for doing a master plan for the whole county. And so this is simply a procedural ask for us to reorient those dollars so that a portion thereof, 40%, comes from the general fund. It's really a kind of an exercise of procedure, but wanted to make sure to bring it back to you. The other thing that's important and worth noting is that it will be funded, as I recall, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, Margie, Aaron, it'll be funded through the county board's line item or section of the budget, I should say, because it is a strategic priority move. So those are just two things to note. It really is again, an exercise in housekeeping. It doesn't matter where in the budget. It could be in your budget. It could be in my budget. It could be in the Director of Administration's budget. But in some way, shape, or form, it needs to be funded by the general fund at least 40%, we believe.
Okay. Supervisor Mary, you have a question?
Yeah, a couple questions just for some clarification on the fiscal effect. It says the plan is to not replace this position when the incumbent finishes the work. So there's a sundown on this?
Correct. That when it was funded in the 2021 budget, we were already using dollars that were a one-time use. They just happened to be from Samaritan. We laid that out in the 2021 budget. What we're saying now is that hasn't changed. All that's changed is the funding source. So now there's general fund dollars that are funding it through strategic priorities rather than just Samaritan. It's still one-time funding.
All right, then also says the authorized use is $75,000, which represents 40% of the cost. What's the total cost on this?
I'm not that good at math.
Is it going to be 2.5 times the 75? Is that it or what?
Yeah. Total budget, 186,000.
So that's a fully loaded, that's
fully,
all
yes.
salary benefits, everything.
That's the whole package.
Correct.
All right.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further question. Oh,
Make one clarifying point, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to just be clear. I said one-time funding. That doesn't mean it ends in 2021. It likely actually ends in 2022 because Samaritan, that project, and quite frankly, the master plan project probably bleed into 2022. So you're going to see this likely again in the coming budget, 2022, 2023 budget. But it is a finite period of time. That's what I meant when I said it's one-time funding. It's a finite period of time.
Project based.
Yes, project specific, correct, exactly.
And we are going to let Matt retire at the end of that, right?
No.
The
He
jury's
tried
still out.
once before, I know that, and we,
Well, the
forced him
problem
to
is we can't
stay.
do anything without confirmation from higher headquarters, and Maureen has not authorized that yet.
For the record.
well, I could talk to her too. It might help.
Supervisor Schleif, do you have a?
Thank you. So to be clear, there may be future projects that will fall under his purview. You don't have to say yes or no. There may be. Okay.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the funding. Supervisor Mary, Supervisor Bossert. See no further discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, resolution 2020 carryover request.
Thank you. This is another technical one. I'll let the committee report largely speak for itself, but this is an annual request that we do, just moving money from the 2020 budget into 2021. Everything on this request has been through the appropriations process already, or it has legal restrictions on the use of the money, and it's just a technical piece where we carry it into the next year. There's no repurposing of dollars in this request or anything like that, which for that reason, we took it to this committee and then straight to the board. Again, just because of the technical nature. So.
Okay, seeing no questions, I'll entertain a motion. Do you have a question? Should-
Yeah, I do have a question in regards to, and I probably should know the answer to this. There are two items on here regarding the Fair Park capital projects. One for $45,000 and one for $80,000. One was for boiler replacement and one was for HVAC. I guess I'm just curious as to, with the lack of the use at Fair Park this last year, I don't know why that was never done. I'm just curious as to why those projects were not carried out. Now, maybe there's a real good reason for that. I just don't want why it wasn't done last year. The monies were there, and maybe we don't have an answer for that.
I'm not sure why they weren't done. Okay. No good reason.
All right,
No
thank
good
you.
reason. Okay. All right. Because it wouldn't have disrupted anything apparently.
I wouldn't read too much into that though.
Mhm.
I wouldn't read too much into that though. And the reason I say that is because you have to remember last year facilities was busy building sneeze guards and all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's possible it should have gotten attention. It's also very possible it just fell off the platter when they had all these other odd job type projects that were happening. So we can look into it further, but I wouldn't jump to that conclusion quite yet.
Okay. All right. Entertain a motion. Supervisor Dice. Supervisor Schleif. See no further discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Ordinance amendment regarding executive committee duties. Brad, were you going to speak to that?
All right, so you'll know in the consent agenda, there was the county's 6-year financial plan. And when the county executive was preparing that document along with his team, we happened to note that our ordinance actually calls for there to be a 5-year fiscal plan. And so knowing that we're moving the way we do our budgeting now, it doesn't seem to make any sense to have an ordinance that requires a 5-year plan if in fact in practice it may not be a 5-year plan. It could be longer, it could be shorter. So we're just striking this out of county law so that what it says essentially is that the county executive shall prepare a comprehensive capital, operational, and fiscal plan covering all county departments and agencies, but we take away how long or how lengthy that plan has to be to provide flexibility. That's all this is.
Especially since we're on a biennial budget, it would seem that a odd numbered wouldn't work within that
So,
framework.
right, because so technically a 6-year financial plan is in violation of our county code. So this changes that, so we don't have to worry about that any longer. The plan can be prepared as is necessary versus adhering to some outdated code provision.
Okay. Are there any questions? If not, entertain a motion. Motion by Kelling, second by Bossert.
Can I
I'm
just make
sorry.
a comment, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Just for clarification, when this gets to board, this is, I think you're going to continue to see ordinances of this variety that keep coming. One thing you got to remember, and some of you were here, most of you actually were not here. We put everything in code, especially before my tenure. Like literally everything became county law instead of using a traditional policy procedure manual. Instead of having a more informal structure, everything was county law. And I used to make that argument all the time to previous county attorneys and others that when you put it in county law, you're making it a violation of the law not to do something. Well, by just adopting a 6-year financial plan, I suppose you could theoretically argue that we broke the law, which is asinine. Of course, that's not the intent. So especially now with having a county executive, an equal branch of government, you're going to keep seeing more of these that are really cleaning up there shouldn't be a law that dictates to us that you do this. It's a best practice. So just expect more of them coming. We're not trying to do power grabs or things of that nature. These things never should have been in law in the first place. We caught a lot of it during RECOD, and I say it was really Brad and his team. But there will be more as we run into individual issues.
Supervisor Kelling.
So to paraphrase, because we moved to a county executive position, we would expect that our code needs to be cleaned up and aligned with that position to make sure that we're not in violation of our own code and to make sure that you also have your set outline of duties and as well as us, correct?
Correct, exactly. And which is why you see things like the 6-year financial plan still on a consent agenda, because it's not that we're following the law, it's that the policy is we bring it to you so you know what the hell's going on. So yes, exactly. You clean it up because you created a county executive. It's literally the purpose of the position.
The roles and the expectations will be obviously more cleared up for us and for you. So we have a very distinctive idea of what's your purview, what's our purview.
Correct. And you remember when you established the county executive position, you directed Brad to go through the code and clean it up. Well, predominantly, if you remember that ordinance, it was changing the words county administrator to county executive. And now we know as we're going through our first full cycle of a year and a little more of county executive, we're finding things in the code that, okay, that one doesn't make sense. Let's go and fix that one. And I'm just assuming you're going to see more and more of that.
And I think that when this does get to the floor, we need people to understand the why of this. It is to clearly dictate what is your purview and what is ours, and by code, hence law, that we're doing this. We're not trying to change or take away power or anything like that. We are merely setting the rules and the guidelines for both offices.
Yes, and I think it needs to be emphasized by this committee to anyone who would ask that this particular item was still on your agenda and you're still seeing it. So it's happening in action. Not only are we saying we're going to change the laws because this is a conflict, we're also still living up to our mutual positions as separate bodies, separate bodies politic, separate branches of government.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ordinance passes to the board. D, Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, Grant Administrator Contract Conflict of Interest Disclosure, Kunkel Engineering Group. Is that going to be Scott or is it going to be Brad?
I think Scott and I will take it together. He'll give you a bit of an introduction as to what's this about, and I'll tell you what the investigation I conducted revealed, and that we should be good to go.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What came about is that with the community development block grant, obviously, like we talked earlier, there's a lot of strings attached, a lot of paperwork with the state government as well as federal government. One of the paperwork that our consultant had to fill out was a potential conflict of interest form when they actually submitted into to be our vendor to do our contract grant administration. With that, they listed several people as Brad will go through as far as people potentially having a conflict of interest, basically people they've done work with in the past to be full disclosure. With that, Brad and myself had to go back and look at all their potential conflicts of interest to see if there actually was a conflict or not before we actually hire them on board as our grant administrator. So that's why we pulled it from the county board agenda last week. So with that, I'll turn over to Brad, but basically it's a lot of paperwork that they had to fill out, and because they checked several boxes, we have to actually go back and review those.
Right, so they checked boxes indicating that they had prior relationships with certain individuals affiliated with the county. And when the state saw that, what the state asked us to do is just go back to those individuals and make sure there wasn't anything in those relationships that would create a conflict of interest such that this engineering firm would be disqualified from taking on this contract. And they listed Scott, and they listed Supervisor Gundrum, they listed Supervisor Newman, and of course, County Executive Showman. And the basis for those names that they listed was because they've had professional relationships with each of these individuals in the past. They are the city engineer for the city of West Bend, and of course, Supervisor Newman is the Public Works Director. They listed Supervisor Gundrum because she was the comptroller for Mayville for a period of time that they were doing work for Mayville. They listed the county executive because they did some work for the city of Princeton when the county executive was the city administrator for Princeton. And of course, they listed Scott as well because of their professional relationship. What I had to do at that point, we met with the state yesterday. The state asked me to talk to each of these individuals to see if there was anything more to the story than meets the eye. And the answer quite simply is no, there is not. Each one of these individuals that I listed has had nothing but a professional relationship, meaning whatever professional role they served in, they encountered working with this firm. In fact, Supervisors Gundrum and Newman had no idea this contract had even been awarded to this firm, had no input in it, had no information whatsoever. Nobody that I interviewed, and I talked to Scott, I talked to the county executive, and of course the two supervisors, had any sort of family working for these companies, no personal relationships of any kind. I took a look at our ethics code, chapter 40 of our code, to determine whether or not there was anything in that code that would be implicated. For example, did anybody have any economic interest in this contract, any of those individuals? Meaning, did they get any sort of personal benefit, or their families get any sort of personal benefit as a result of us signing this contract? The answer is no. Again, our supervisors weren't even aware of it. Josh has no role in the negotiations. Scott did have some input in, or I shouldn't say input, but did review some of the submissions when the bids were put out, but in no way did he receive any sort of gifts or special treatment or kickbacks of any kind when this particular contract was awarded. In fact, I think Scott would tell you he even had some reservations at first about this contract that he worked through. So my conclusion is that there are no conflicts of interest that would prevent this particular firm from having this contract. What happens next is I am to write a letter to the state detailing my investigation and my conclusions applying the code and the law. And then this will come before the county board on a consent agenda. next month. I'll provide that letter so the board is aware of what we determined. And at that point, the state will then issue their decision as to whether or not they agree. And if, assuming they will, then we can proceed as planned. The state did indicate that generally speaking, absent something that maybe comes up last minute or they come across that we didn't, they generally will endorse our decision. So fair enough? Okay.
Okay. So do we still need a motion to approve the grant administrator contract?
No, this is just,
Because it's an action item.
I know, I don't think we needed to do anything in terms of action today. Did she give you an indication to that, Scott, that you'd want that?
It wouldn't hurt, correct?
Okay.
Okay.
I would agree that there's a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross, and the more you cross them, even though you don't need to cross them 3 times, it might help to cross them 3
All right.
times.
So in other words, not the worst idea, just in case we don't have to come back again and ask for further action if they think we missed something. So
Supervisor Mahalik?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Who raised the allegation, and is there any backstory to that?
well, they have to fill out this the engineering firm, they have to fill out this form that indicates whether or not, and it's got all of your names on it, every county supervisor, my name is on it, anybody who works essentially in the administration offices of the county. And they're supposed to go through, the engineering firm, and check all the boxes of anybody they've ever dealt with before here at the county, in whatever capacity. At first, Scott and I thought, well, maybe they shouldn't have checked those boxes because there aren't any conflicts with those people. They were professional relationships. And in fact, on that form, Kunkel indicated these were just professional relationships. But when the state saw that form, they said, well, that representation they're making is all fine and good, but they wanted us to go back and investigate to make sure there wasn't more to the story, that there weren't actual conflicts that we needed to have disclosed.
Was it Kunkel then literally not understanding or doing this? I mean, how often are they dealing with contracts where they put themselves in a hole and then chew up a whole bunch of our county attorney's time trying to fix or get the squirrels back in the box? It's kind of frustrating to hear that. If they don't know what they're doing, why are we hiring them?
Well, as it turns out, I thought the same thing. In fact, Scott and I had that exact conversation. Exactly. However, when we got on the phone with the state's opinion was that they actually did fill it out appropriately, that just disclosing the relationships was appropriate, even though they were professional in nature. So it looks like it's actually the state that made the work, and Kunkel actually did fill out the form correctly.
Tony Evers then.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. I get it.
All right. Seeing.
So just to be clear, there was never any actual allegation of wrongdoing in any way, shape, or form. This is just routine disclosures and checking, correct?
100% correct. No allegations of any wrongdoing, no allegations of any sort of conflicts of interest, actual conflicts of interest. They just disclosed the names of the individuals they've dealt with before in the county. And that triggered this investigation, which took me all of about, an hour to make a few calls and that kind of thing. It wasn't so bad, but it was hoops to jump through that at the end of the day, we did it and we're satisfied. We're okay.
Yep. All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, entertain a motion to approve the grant administrator contract. Supervisor Mahalik, Supervisor Mary. See no further discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, next meeting date, Wednesday, June 16th, 2021 at 4:30 PM. We stand adjourned.